Polls have opened in the Netherlands as 4 days of voting in the EU parliamentary elections begins. A new report warns there's a possibility famine has hit northern Gaza, although no formal declaration has been made. Polls show Europe's far-right parties are struggling to find cohesion ahead of the EU elections. Polls have opened in the Netherlands as 4 days of voting in the EU parliamentary elections begins. It's the only country to start its single-day vote so early, but will be followed by Ireland on Friday and the rest of the EU nations over the weekend. 400 million citizens will be casting their votes in the elections, which are expected to deliver significant gains for the hard right. In the Netherlands, voting comes 6 months after the far-right Party for Freedom became the largest in the Dutch National Parliament. Polling suggests it will build on that popularity. A new report has warned there's a possibility famine has hit northern Gaza, although no formal declaration can be made until more data is collected. Famine exists when 20% of households are essentially starving, at least 30% of children suffer wasting, and 2 adults or 4 children per every 10,000 are dying daily of hunger and its complications. But the report's authors, known as the Famine Early Warning Systems Network, say their ability to collect data has been impeded by the war and restrictions on humanitarian access. Israel has repeatedly denied there is famine underway in Gaza and rejected allegations it's used hunger as a weapon in its war against Hamas. A formal declaration could be used as evidence at the International Criminal Court, as well as at the International Court of Justice, where Israel faces allegations of genocide. The report also cautioned efforts to increase aid into Gaza are insufficient and urged Israel's government to act urgently. Much of Gaza's 2.3 million population has been displaced since the war began, and their health ministry claims more than 36,000 Palestinians have been killed. Israel's expanding offensive in Rafah has largely cut off the flow of food, medicine, and other supplies to Palestinians facing widespread hunger. In the south, thousands have returned to Khan Yunis, where basic infrastructure is lacking and people are struggling to get the minimum amounts of water to survive. Meanwhile, despite pressure from the United States on Israel and Hamas to accept its 3-phase ceasefire proposal, no agreement has yet been made.
A candidate of the far-right German AfD party was stabbed in Germany's southern city of Mannheim. Heinrich Koch, a candidate in the local elections, allegedly saw an individual tearing up campaign posters and tried to stop him. The 25-year-old suspect allegedly assaulted him with a cutter. The victim was not critically injured. The alleged attacker has been arrested and is said to have psychiatric disorders.
Slovakia's capital, Bratislava, is preparing for intense flooding as heavy rainfall in Germany and Austria continues to raise the water levels of the Danube River. The Slovak Hydrometeorological Institute has announced a second-level flood warning for the Bratislava district, but they believe this will be exceeded near the station and in the borough of Devinska Nova Ves, which borders the Morava River. Several areas near the Danube and Morava rivers have already been closed to the public, and the city's police force has urged people to avoid these locations for safety reasons. Meanwhile, heavy downpours have already caused flooding in the Slovak districts of Ranov nad Topľou, where a third-level flood warning is in place. Driveways, gardens and cellars are overflowing with water.
a určite máme všetko zamlčené za toto. Taká, jak prietrž tých mračien bola.
Firefighters in the western village of Kamena Paruba have also been pumping out excess water from an overflowing stream. Europe's ultra-conservative parties are being forced to seek out more moderate political allies in an attempt to secure enough votes to influence future EU legislation. According to the Euronews super polls, while the Conservatives are expected to see significant gains in the upcoming elections, they are still too divided to produce a viable EU Commission leader.
If we think about Giorgia Meloni, for example, the Italian Prime Minister, we have to understand that when we look at the leadership in the European right, we have also to see to take in account that we're talking about leaders that in some cases are also head of government, so they have different interests.
According to the Euronews Polls Centre's simulations, if the Conservatives decide to go into coalition, their best option would be to join up with the Liberals of the Renew Party. This way, they could match up parliamentary seat distribution with the realpolitik of the EU government. Coalition between the Conservative groups would be difficult, as it would be too weighted towards the right. There are also many issues the two main far-right parties, the European Conservatives and Reformists, led by Italy's Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, and the Identity and Democracy Party, led by France's Marine Le Pen, are not united on. At the moment, the only issue that can create some cohesion within the right is the struggle against immigration. But even then, solutions to the matter differ between the southern flank and the eastern and northern parts of the EU.
But the center of gravity will certainly move to the right. And this is something the EPP, which will then be the central player, will be able to use as a blackmail potential vis-à-vis the Liberals and the Social Democrats, if not the Greens. I don't believe that the EPP is serious about working with identity and a democracy. That would also be political suicide at the national level, but they will certainly use it.
According to the Euronews Polls Centre, Europe's mainstream political parties are likely to face the difficult task of creating a ruling parliament using votes from the fragmented radical right bloc.
Unraveling the thread of social networks and revealing the real from the fake. But above all, to detect the manipulation of information. That's the job of this analyst who works discreetly for the Domestic Intelligence Service.
Ce que nous cherchons à détecter, ce sont des anomalies, on peut les appeler, donc une augmentation soudaine du nombre de posts ou de retweets ou de likes sur un sujet bien particulier, ou l'apparition de nouveaux acteurs.
In April, European figures from the conservative right and far right met in Brussels. The Foreign Intelligence Service scrutinized the exchanges.
Toute la zone grise qui représente la majorité de ce qu'on voit à l'écran est relative à une discussion ou à des discussions liées à la conférence politique qui a eu lieu mi-avril ici à Bruxelles. Tandis que les acteurs qui sont dans les zones bleutées sont des acteurs qu'on monitore au quotidien pour la simple raison qu'ils sont issus de la mouvance pro-russe et il semble clair que le fait de s'immiscer dans une conversation politique qui est physiquement basée ici en Belgique a sans doute pour objectif de créer plus, d'amplifier le chaos existant ou la polarisation relative à cette conférence.
The risk of foreign attempts to manipulate public opinion are high during elections. In Poland, a special commission has already begun to investigate Russian and Belarusian influence in the country. Citizens go to the polls during the European elections with an expectation for change, for improvement. According to Boyd Wagner, chief analyst of the Euronews Polls Center, data shows that the main concerns for Europeans are the economy and security issues. They are expecting more stability from the upcoming parliament.
Number one would be the economy, would be things like purchasing power and the inflation. I think secondly, the one that is very common across every country is migration. Remains to be an important issue.
The economy, migration, and climate policies are some of the top concerns that people in Brussels have as the EU elections loom.
if you want to do anything about a climate, you have to pay. So economics is important.
Schon auch wichtig, dass wir es schaffen, als Europäische Union klimaneutral zu werden und da auch den Weg da hinzukommen, dass wir starten und da aber trotzdem das sozialverträglich ist. Also dass wir es schaffen, dass das eben nicht bedeutet, dass nur die Reichen sich das leisten können und die Armen immer ärmer werden.
Well, economic stability, all our economies are so interlinked in the globalist world, and we have local problems as well in Ireland. It continues to be a massive housing crisis, cost of living crisis, and I don't think politicians are taking seriously these issues, especially European Parliament politicians.
At the political level, the focus is on competitiveness, while for European citizens, it's about their daily lives, and for some, it's two sides of the same coin. On the other hand, the issues of defense also appears to be a key priority for Brussels.
If politicians worry about competitiveness, this is about the budgets of the states. And the budget of the states is then, of course, necessarily also translates into the money of the people. So there is, of course, a strong connection. Now, when it comes to defense, then we see that people also worry about that. But that very much depends on where they live.
Voter expectations vary across member states, but they all unite in the hope for better management of both present and the future.